There.
Welcome to the Teacher's Pep Rally. If you missed our last episode, we had a conversation with our worth coach, former economics teacher Jasmine Hall, about our relationship about money and thinking about our worth. Please go back and check it out. While you are there, leave us a review. We value you and these conversations. Our guest today is a junior high school studies teacher for over the past 12 years. He has experience in teaching private and public schools in many subjects, including world history, geography, American history, science, sociology. I have a bachelor's degree in that, by the way, filmmaking, and even guitar, grades 5th through 8th. What do you think about that, Pete?
Awesome.
His true passion, though, is American history, and he shares that passion through videos and resources for teachers, students, and parents called the Daily Bellringer. Let's talk about life, learning, and history. Please welcome to the Teacher's Pep Rally, Jared Bruening.
Yeah.
I feel like we need some kind of historical bell or something.
We need a fife and drum would be good.
Oh yeah, I should have brought a bell to ring here or something. Yes, yes. Say
awesome.
hear ye, hear ye. It's time
There
for
you
the
go.
Teacher pep rally. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. I like that. Well,
Yeah.
welcome, Jared. We're so excited to have you. We really haven't had a space to talk about history in general. I mean, we tend to bring it up is a concept when we're talking about us as teachers and education and all the things that we've seen in schools, but to actually have someone here to talk about American history, we're excited.
Well, thank you so much for letting me come on here. And honestly, it was kind of weird to hear you talk about all the different classes I shouldn't say I've had to teach, but I've ended up teaching. I'm sure all of you have experience with that you end up teaching so many different things than what your actual focus was. So yeah, I've taught some odd things, even a guitar class in there at one point I was teaching.
That's it.
So yeah.
We wear many hats, don't we?
Yeah.
As educators, It just comes with the course. Well, before we get started, Jared, I kind of didn't give you a heads up on this, so you'll have time. Letitia has started a little thing we do at the beginning. Letitia, do you want to explain what it is?
Absolutely. So welcome again, Jared. So we've started doing a little something called Happy Happenings. And it basically gives each of us an opportunity to share something that made us happy during the week, put a smile on our face, made us giggle, or even gratitude, something that we were kind of grateful for that happened during the week. And it gives us this opportunity to really put some love and positivity and light into the world. And so we would love for you to share your happy happening, but we will let you marinate on that and we will go round robin. Aaron, what's this week?
Yeah, I have a lot of great happy happenings, but I think the one I'm going to highlight, especially since our guest, we know Jared is a Disney fan. I am going to Disney World for spring break. Shocker.
What?
With my sister and her family. And we're getting close to that time of where we got to start making reservations for restaurants. So I'm getting in that mode, which is almost as fun as going to the parks, where you start planning out the things that you want to see and do. So that's my happy happenings, because I talked to my sister yesterday about it, and we're getting ready to start planning, and that makes me very happy.
That is awesome. Although I'm not shocked.
Right.
I have to pick your brain because, I've been around you guys so long. I'm ready to do it. Adults only, just me and hubby, and enjoy the park.
Oh, we'll take care of you.
So yes, I believe it. So Pete, what you have for us this week?
We're having tomorrow night a reading festival at our school, celebrate the kids, keeping track of how many minutes they've read. And we've reached a big milestone, a couple million. And the teachers are going to be in their classrooms. Everybody's wearing their pajamas. And I'll be in my Chewbacca onesie and go to the classrooms, read. But a few of us teachers got together, so well, why don't we do what Pete's doing in the music room and musicalize one of the books? So a few of us teachers that play instruments, we formed a band. We've practiced once, and we're going to be jamming to Pete the Cat and all these other songs in the media center. We're going to have a whole, I think we're called Shh, as in, in the library. Shh, I think that's the name of our band. And we're going to be jamming to songs as we read the books and the kids are going through. It's going to be a good time. It felt good to be a part of a band again. So, yeah.
Man, I'm sad I didn't get asked. You all may not know this, but I used to play the sticks.
Nice.
I had a solo middle school for the Pink Panther theme music.
Nice.
So
there's
Pete,
no use
I'm
to.
free whenever you want to you available.
You're in.
It never ceases to amaze me, Aaron. I'm still stuck on the Chewbacca onesie. Like I didn't hear much after that.
Yeah, it was kind of silent, wasn't it? That was kind of.
And I know you have one. That's
awesome.
what scares me.
That's awesome, Pete. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. So I think I'm going to share mine. The last few months, or maybe even the last few weeks, I really have been taking deep dives into the arts, like just going to shows and things. And so I did Cirque du Soleil when it was here. I went to the Biltmore and saw the Da Vinci exhibition they had. And last weekend, my nephew did a tribute to Ray Charles down in Marietta Square at the Lyric. And, you know, Pete, this is kind of like where I kind of want to highlight you, because it's a happy happening, because it made me realize how much joy these events really brought to my life. It made me think about you and all the dedicated fine arts teachers that we have in the world that cultivate this and that really push, you know, our kids to be creative and share with the world their gifts in that way. And I'm telling you, I've been smiling for weeks just because I've been able to really appreciate really the fine arts and music and all that good stuff and singing. So Pete, thank you for being part of my happy happening. I don't think
good for the soul. I'm glad you're doing that.
And what is your quote, Pete? Because that's been on my mind too. A creative life is a
happier life, healthier life, and more successful life.
All the way. I love it. So you've been on my heart, Pete. So thank you to you and all the teachers out there.
I'll talk to you about it.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Fred, what you got for us?
Well, I'm really happy. I did something I didn't think I was going to do until actually tonight. Today I went to the store and I bought an oversized piece of luggage that I'm going to fit myself in and mail myself to Aaron, who will then take me to the Disney trip. So we're going to be good to go about that. Actually, my happy happening was something that happened today. And so today's day 2 of a student event. I am very fortunate this past year to have had a great student who is our club president for the degree program we're in. And he's just driven and he loves to get people engaged. So today was the second day of a 2-day event where they were doing a Lego build of the Atari 2600 kit.
Cool.
But so that wasn't it though. But what I wanted to share though is the number of students that were packed into this room that were just so excited to be doing this. Now, it sounds like, these are college kids. Why are they monkeying around with Legos? One thing we talk about a lot in here, right? It's the community building and all of that. And that's what I saw happening today. And I was smiling. I was also laughing with them because they were brethren geeks. And I just felt I was loving it. I said, they're in their element. And these little conversations I'm picking up here and there started to bleed into the degree program and the classes and the challenges and how you're working through that. And it was all that good stuff that was finally coalescing. And I just looked over at the club president and I was like, you're doing it. This is awesome. Keep doing it. And it smelled really bad in the space too, because they had food. They were all college guys and women in there. And it's just, swirling and stuff, but a lot of smiles, a lot of laughs. And actually Lego sweat. Good stuff. It was just a good positive vibe.
That's a new one.
I'm
Lego sweat.
Not Lego sweat. Thank you so much, Fred, for sharing. That is awesome. And I just want to piggyback on that. We're never too old to continue to tap into the things that made us happy as kids, right? I think all these rules jack us up.
Yes.
They jack us up. So play on as Erin shows her Lego.
Oh, that's a good one, Erin.
Thank you.
I love it. So there's a theme here, right? The arts, music, family, fun, Disney. With that being said, Jared, take us home. What do you have?
Well, I guess first I need to tell a quick little story. I guess Pete reminded me of this. You said you're playing in a little band there at school made up of teachers, right? Mm-hmm. And what was the name of your band again?
Because we're playing in a library.
Okay. Well, a few years ago, of course, we had this big student assembly at school, and at the end of the assembly, we decided, well, a few of us teachers that play instruments, let's get up and jam for a little bit. So, I grabbed my guitar. There was a bass player. We had a drummer. Well, it just so happened all of them had the same heritage.
Oh, nice.
I do. Okay. And so I don't know if you guys can guess what our band name was. We called ourselves the Bald Eagles.
Love it.
was the name of our band.
Perfect.
So yeah, but the kid, I don't think the kids got the joke. It kind of went over.
Right. It's okay.
But okay. So anyway, I guess a happy. Was happy happening? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It is? Right. My happy happening. Well, I guess a couple things. I'm also the technology coordinator at my school as well, which
there you go.
Is a whole nother can of worms. There was a big issue this week that I got figured out that had been hanging over our heads. So that was a big relief. So I was happy about that. But probably more importantly, today, actually just today in class, we were working on these big timelines, kind of just a bunch of events leading towards the American Civil War. And there's a special needs student in my class that is just really tough to try to get through to them and everything. And today they were really on task, really, getting some stuff done and really demonstrating how much knowledge they had gained. And so that was just like a big thing for me today to go over there and work with them and see that they were actually getting some of it and everything. So that was probably my happy happening today.
Nice.
Yay.
Nice.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for indulging me with our happy happening this week. And I just want to encourage all of our listeners, try to adopt this in your own life and even in your classroom. Sometimes we lean into the work so that we forget to celebrate those moments or even be mindful of these happy happenings, right? So thank you again. Keep up the great work, guys, with the happy happenings. And Erin, I'm going to pass it off to you.
All right. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, Jared. I said in your intro, and it's because you say this, you state this, it's on your website, everything. Where do you think your passion for American history came from?
Well, I think like a lot of us, our passion for teaching and everything, we could probably look back. I'm sure there's teachers that influence you, but a lot of it is family as well. And I would have to say, like my older brother, Jason, he is an absolute just history nerd. I mean, you talk about somebody who knows their history. He knows history inside and out. And it seems like inevitably my wife gets mad at me whenever I call my brother on the phone. Somehow we'll be talking about like what's happening now. Within like 5 minutes, we're talking about some historic topic. And it just drives her nuts that, it's like, why don't you just talk about what's happening now? And I'm like, well, we love talking about history. But actually, my brother and I years ago, we had a discussion about this, about like, why in the world did both of us get so interested in history? Well, a lot of it goes back to my dad, who passed away, about 13 years ago now. And my dad, every time we would go on vacation, we would end up going to some historic site, some national park. We'd go to Vicksburg or Lincoln's Home or, all these different historic sites when we were kids. And my dad worked for the railroad. And so we're like, what in the world? Why did dad take us to all these places on vacation? Because honestly, he could probably care less about history. Why did he take us there? Well, it dawned on us once we became parents ourselves that the reason he took us there was because it was cheap. Because he didn't have to pay to get us into it. He did take us to Disney World once as a kid, but other than that, it was basically just historic sites that he took us to. And I think a lot of it was just simply because he was such a cheapskate that he was like, well, I'm not going to take him to, anywhere more expensive. So he just took us to historic sites. So that ended up feeding my passion for history. But then also I can point to, there's one experience I had when I was a child that really, I could say, got me really into history. I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, down in Southwest Missouri. And just outside of Springfield, Missouri, there's actually a Civil War battlefield called the Battle of Wilson's Creek. Took place August 10th, 1861. It's one of the very early battles of the Civil War. But I remember when I was a kid, my parents took us out there and they dropped me and one of my best friends off and just said, hey, we'll pick you up in about 3 hours. Just go walk around the battlefield. And so we went hiking up through the battlefield and everything. And we ended up on this one place called Bloody Hill, where some of the worst fighting took place during the battle. Well, of course, we're 8-year-old kids and we get up there and we find this big hole in the ground, like this big sinkhole. And so being 8-year-old kids, of course, we're like, we're going to go jump in this. And so we jump in this big, dirty hole and everything. We just start rolling around probably for half an hour. We run up one side and then run down the other and we're goofing around for probably half an hour there up on top of Bloody Hill. Well, then we hike back down and go to the visitor center and we find one of the park rangers and we're like, hey, what was the deal with that sinkhole up on Bloody Hill? And then the park ranger tells us, oh, that was one of the mass graves where they buried about 40 Union soldiers after the battle. And I suppose for me being an 8-year-old kid, that just shocked me so much and made me begin to think well, why in the world were these guys here? Why were they willing to fight here? Why did this whole thing happen? And so I think that just really piqued my interest going to get into history, and it's just gone on from there. And so yeah, those are probably the main reasons why I'm so into American history. And then of course becoming a teacher now, it's just really expanded my perspective on history and just learning so much more about it. So I would say those are some of the reasons. Yes, I had some great teachers when I was in high school and junior high, history teachers, but I would really point to those things when I was a child as being the reasons why I'm so into history today.
I love that you shared that, because, to your point, we usually do highlight a teacher, right? Or someone, a coach that inspired us. But what I'm hearing from you is exposure. Yeah, Dad was probably trying to save a buck or two, but it kind of reminded me of how important exposure is, right? I remember being in the classroom and having kids that never experienced sand, and having to go to Toys R Us and bring sand in, and, a pool to put the sand in, and the shovels and the this and the that. Exposure is so, so important.
Yes, it is.
And so I just wanted to lift that up and highlight that life is a great teacher. Exposure is a great teacher.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know how many times, I've had students that I've been like, well, haven't you traveled here or seen this? And then they're like, well, no, they've never really left their hometown. And it's like, you got to bring things into the classroom that, kind of show them what these places are like. And, fortunately, I'm in a school where we can take some field trips. So like I'm in Illinois. So the nice thing is we can drive down to Springfield and we can go to all the Lincoln stuff. There's just Abraham Lincoln stuff everywhere there. So, so it's nice to be able to take students to those places. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, if you can bring things in that are real for them to experience, that's so much better than just simply telling them about it, if they can experience it.
Absolutely. And for our parents, we may have parents that listen to us. We want to encourage them too, right? That the park can be just as amazing for science and looking at bugs and leaves and all that good stuff. I often tell the story. My dad was in the military, and although I grew up in the hood, I did go to Europe, which was kind of weird. But anyway, I was in Europe, and I remember coming back from Europe and sitting next to a German woman who had white chocolate. And she offered me white chocolate, and I might have been maybe 9. I didn't even know white chocolate existed. And it was delicious. And it was the weirdest thing. And I kind of used that as a platform in my teaching. We have such a powerful job to just expose and influence. And there's more to life than milk chocolate. There's white chocolate too.
And also, Jared, as you're saying that too, I was thinking about, like, as a kid, I think I kind of experienced history the same way, but parks were different back then too, right? Because they were that kind of flat experience in a way. But now, like, if any parents are out there and teachers who have that responsibility to take kids somewhere, and you don't have that interest in history, it is such a much more rich experience through the use of apps and these media experiences that they're building into the visitor centers and so on. So even if you don't know about history, and you like Letitia, you're saying, get that exposure, you don't have to be the person who holds all the knowledge. It's there, and they'll present it to you in such a really, really engaging way. It's fun. I mean, we were down in Gettysburg, my son and I, again this past summer. And when we go to that visitor center, that museum, you could spend easily a whole day in there, just taking in the videos and the interactive displays and it's really, really amazing.
Well, so, I suppose I may bring this up later as one of my sources that you should probably look at. I don't know if you've ever looked at a site called Battlefield Trust, but they have a lot of great stuff. And actually, I believe at Gettysburg and other battlefields, they have some augmented reality where you can go with your phone and walk around, and it'll show you, like, in real time where things were at when these events took place. And it's really amazing, some of the stuff they've done. But I suppose I'll put in a shameless plug real quick. Of course, I'll talk about my Bellringer here in a moment, but I've always thought too, a lot of people, when they go to these parks, could just simply watch a quick little YouTube video, like one of my Bellringers, really short 5-minute thing, and you've got a basic summary of what happened at the site that you're about to go to, and then you go to the site, and it's like we kind of got a little bit of an idea, but going into it of what you're going to see. So yeah.
Yep. You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm sitting here thinking that exposure there's another layer now with technology, right? And that you're providing these videos to give people a snippet, and there's a lot. You put a lot in there. It's very easy to follow into your Daily Bellringer videos. So how did that come about, where you started taking your knowledge and passion for American history and putting them into these videos and kind of what's the purpose or your thoughts behind your Daily Bellringer?
Well, I suppose first I'll explain bell ringers, because I know we as educators, we're used to having bell ringers, and we know how those work and how it's really an effective classroom management tool, having bell ringers. But basically, a bell ringer is just simply when students come into the classroom, you have some sort of an activity for them to be doing for right off the bat. And, it basically gets the student's mindset into that topic for the day, whether it's a science class or an English class or whatever, like a writing prompt on the board or a short article to read. Something like that is a bell ringer. And honestly, it has kind of an administrative purpose as well. I'm sure as teachers that we have things we have to do at the beginning of class, taking attendance, getting that kid that's been gone for 3 days what they need for the day, those type things. And so you need some of that time at the beginning of class as a teacher. And so you need those activities for students to do at the very beginning of class. So that was something, I had always used bell ringers in my class. And honestly, the way the Daily Bellringer got started is a few years ago, I had a teacher I worked with who had taught English for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, the next year, they told her, you're teaching American history next year. And she had never, ever taught American history. And again, you know how this goes, that a lot of times they put you in classes that sometimes you're not always that comfortable in. And so she was literally bawling, crying about having to teach this class. And I just felt terrible for her. And so I started thinking to myself, what could I do to help her out? And I'd always been kind of into video editing. We'd done a lot of little video projects in my classroom and everything. And I thought to myself, what if I could just record a really short, 5-minute summary of some of these events that they're going to cover in history class. And if I gave her those videos, she could use that as just a bell ringer to get the class started. And then if she just had simply like another activity, like a primary source or some other kind of activity for them to do once they got done watching that, then that would kind of get her going in the right direction. And so I started making these videos actually just for one teacher in my school district who needed help. And so once I started making them for her, I probably got, a few dozen videos made. And again, some of my early videos are a little rough, but I got some of those videos made. And then my wife said to me, she's like, well, why don't you just put them on YouTube and see if anybody else, because she said, I'm sure there's other teachers that would want to use it. So I have to give a lot of credit to my wife. She's the one that was smart enough to say, put them out on YouTube and see if anybody else wants to use them. And of course, now I've got thousands of subscribers, and each day I have thousands of views of students are watching it from all over the country. Wow. I get emails. I've gotten emails from Guam and South Korea of classrooms that are using my videos. I've talked with classes all over the country, kind of had live meetings with them on Zoom and everything. And it's just really cool how it's kind of just taken off once I put it out there. And then of course, then it's just kind of evolved into now I create other activities and resources and worksheets that go along with them. So now I have homeschool families that are using a lot of the resources as well. And so again, that's kind of how it all got started. But I guess too, I'll share real quickly kind of my philosophy of how I make my videos and why I feel like my videos are a little bit different, because there's a lot of history videos out there on YouTube that you can find. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of channels that are devoted to history. However, as a teacher, and again, maybe you guys have had the same experience as I have, when you look for a video to show in your class, for me personally, I'm not looking for something that's too long, because it's like I want something that is going to get the point across of what we're talking about and kind of reinforce whatever idea we're covering. But I want to be able to take that and then have the students take it a step further and do something else with it. So I don't want like a 15-minute video, or I don't want a 10-minute video. Honestly, what I want is just a bell ringer size video, something like 5 minutes long for the students to see. And two, if you've ever looked on YouTube for resources, a lot of times you get videos that are extremely biased, or else they use bad language, or they tell inappropriate jokes. And it's like, that's not what I want in my classroom either. I want just a flat history that is something I can trust. And so I'm hoping that my videos can become something that teachers can trust, that they know they're just going to get the basic history here, and then they can expand. The teacher can take it and expand from there. So that's kind of, the whole reason why I started making the videos, and kind of how I've my approach to actually making my little videos.
Jared, I just want us to pause to celebrate you right now, because, your heart to help a colleague. This is what we do all the time. This is the good stuff. the great stuff that people don't see, right? For you to have a colleague to be stressed out, and trust me, that was kindergarten for me. My principal played a joke and said she was putting me in kindergarten, and I had a meltdown. And I love that you stepped up to the plate to make these videos. To serve one, now you serve thousands, which is so awesome. So I can relate to your colleague with the meltdown. History used to really stress me out. It overwhelmed me. And in college, a professor said, don't worry about the dates. And it's like when he said, don't worry about the dates, it shifted everything for me, because like me and numbers are not really good friends. But that one line, don't worry about the dates, worry about people's and the story and the context and the culture. So how do you go about kind of helping students embrace the history without the fear of all those dates? And
well, I'll say, Letitia, you just stole my next point, really. You basically said exactly what I was about to say about history, because we were going to talk about, what is kind of my approach in the classroom to teaching history, not just simply in my videos. Now, unfortunately, dates and people and all these things, they're something you still kind of have to do in history. You kind of still need to look at those dates and hopefully be able to, in your mind, put them in sequential order and kind of understand the cause and effect relationships. But I was going to say, I really kind of had 3 tips here for teaching history. And honestly, what you just said, you stole what I was going to say.
That's great. No,
that's okay. That's okay. I was going to say some of my tips for like how my approach to teaching history is, when I'm covering a unit of history, I pick 1 or 2 really big themes, and that's what I just keep on driving home to the students and keep on repeating over and over again, or those 1 or 2 big themes. I don't necessarily say, well, remember September 17th, 1862, the Battle of Antietam started at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't say anything like that. I'm like, there's big themes. So like, for example, right now with my 8th graders, we're covering kind of Western expansion and sectionalism in America. And so the big idea is manifest destiny, that idea that Americans had that they were supposed to control the entire continent and go all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And again, today we can look at that and be like, well, for right or wrong, that's what they believed back then. They believed that it was all theirs and they should be able to do whatever they want. And so then we can take events like, look at the Trail of Tears taking place there in 1829 and throughout the 1830s, one of the darkest times in American history, when Native Americans were forced from their land and forced to move west. But you can look at that and you can be like, I can say to the students, what was it that was driving this? Why would people do something so awful to someone else? And then they can say, well, manifest destiny. And it's like, yep, manifest destiny. That's what it was. So I try to drive home those themes and be like, this is the big point. You need to get this. And so, that's kind of my first tip is I would say, make sure when you're going to teach history, pick 1 or 2 big things. Don't pick 30 different things. Pick 1 or 2 big things that you're like, this is the main point that I want the students to know. But just like Letitia said, don't focus so much on the dates. And honestly, I know this is kind of maybe an odd saying for me to have, but my theory is I can get them to grasp the big picture by giving them the details. And so I give them the details and then we go back and look at it again. And then hopefully they can look at it and see the bigger picture. All right. So again, I go over the dates, I go over the people and everything to remember, but then again, I try to relate it to those main topics that I'm really focusing on. And then lastly, I would say, make sure to focus on cause and effect relationships. I'm sure you guys have all heard the saying, I should have wore my t-shirt that says history, don't make me repeat myself, t-shirt that I have. But the cliche is, we learn history so we don't repeat it, because again, there's so many things there's great things that happen in history, but there's also, equally just as many terrible things that have happened in history. And so we don't want to repeat those same mistakes again. And, it's unfortunate today to see how quickly we forget our history and forget things that have happened. And so again, I feel like focusing on those cause and effect relationships to see how this event contributed to causing this event and how we need to try to avoid that in the future so we don't have those events happen again. So I know, again, that's a very cliched answer there for that, but those are just some of my approaches to teaching history and how I kind of go about it in my classroom.
I think those are great tips only because even in the technology stuff that I teach, I always weave in an element of history only because, I look at it from the standpoint, many of them will be in managerial roles at one point, and they're going to be placed in positions where they're going to have to pull out the crystal ball and understand a direction to move in. And if you have a sense of where you came from, it sometimes lays out a little bit of a pathway going forward. And I think it's just the thing, but I like that advice of focusing on the details and let them start to understand how to gather the big picture from that. And I guess in a weird way, that's what I've been doing. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily test them on those details. I don't expect them to remember all those details. I want them to be able to hopefully take those and put it together into a bigger picture. So I think all teachers, we do that. We teach all those details, and then we help them to weave it together into a bigger picture of the topic they're learning about.
Nice.
Jared, I'm going to ask, as you're talking about those big pictures and the cause and effect, and you're going through a semester, sooner or later, you're going to get to those necessary conversations that could be potentially heated, difficult. I'd like to talk about, how do you approach that in the classroom? Any tips outside for us teachers and other history teachers? What would you suggest to best navigate those situations?
I wish I could have a great answer for this and a simple way to get around it. Yeah. But, and again, you've probably heard the saying before, if you're not uncomfortable learning history, then you're probably not really learning history, because you should be uncomfortable about what has happened in our past. And unfortunately, if you look at the history of mankind, it's really a history of what terrible things we've done to each other. And I'm very frank about that with students up front. I tell them, in this class, there's going to be things we're going to talk about that are absolutely wrong, and things that are terrible events that have happened in our history. And unfortunately, it's part of mankind. It's that there's no way to really soften that. It's just simply, it is what it is. And we have to face the facts of what has happened in the past. And so yeah, that's kind of my approach to it, is I just simply, the students probably get sick of me saying it, because it seems like probably just about every week I'll be bringing up a topic and I'll say, you know what, this is something that you should be uncomfortable about. And it's something that unfortunately we have to talk about and recognize that happened in our past. But again, we don't want to have those things happen again. So they need to know about those events that happened in the past.
Yeah, and I think just stating recognition of that is important. That they just kind of get to learn and get to know early on in the school year that, so teaching English, I did American Lit, I did World Lit, and AP Lit for sure. I would read books so that we could do critical analysis on things, look at the history of what was happening at that time period. And I think just they kind of got used to the fact that, okay, sometimes we're going to have conversations in here. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, or I might have extra questions or whatever, but just, I think, saying this is going to be a platform where we're going to be able to talk about it is a huge step as an educator, being able to do that. On top of the fact of, I can't tell you how many times we've had things in our history, especially in the last couple of years, where things are happening and they know what's happening and they see you every day. So it's going to come up, and it's a part of our history and their history. So I think just allowing space for communication is important. And like you said, there is no magic way of dealing with it, but I think just having the platform to be able to do it is the key.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like you said, having space to communicate. I mean, we need to allow all voices to be heard in it when we do, especially when we have these current event things that come up. It's important that everybody gets to have a voice in there, and we're not just simply saying, well, I'm the teacher and I'm the one that says this is what, because again, who knows, 30 years from now, how we're going to interpret some things that happen. So again, I feel like it's really important to hear all sides and allow students to be exposed to all sides and hopefully understand all sides of an issue. That's really something that I'm very passionate about, that I feel like should be in the classroom.
And I think there's an element of hope too, because we're in it right now. These kids, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, they're going to look back and they'll realize they were there. They were there when that happened. But I think what's really great about what you're doing in the classroom and as a history teacher is the fact that you could also give them context. So we feel like we're in something that's never happened before, or these things that are happening in government have never happened before, when in reality, they've happened in some various ways all throughout history. And when you start to understand that some of these things have happened in various degrees in other places, and you can look back and see how they work through it, then that gives you hope to say, oh, okay, there is going to be something that we could do to get through this. Now, however you get through it, I guess that's where you could debate. But I think that's such an important thing too for young people to understand, is that it's not the end of the world. And you can work through things, and you can strive to be better. And that's where, and you could learn from other people and other examples and so on. Not the bad ones, obviously, but you can always learn something from a bad example too, right? What not to do,
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
And I certainly don't want us to go down a historical rabbit hole or even get political. But what's popping in my head is critical race theory. It's such a hot topic. And it's gotten so political. It's a messy, ugly topic. So refreshing, Jared, to hear you say, yeah, but let's expose to all of the history, right? And let's have a critical, humane, respectful conversation, debate, dialogue. Let's wrestle with it, as opposed to trying to ban it from books and libraries and try to muzzle really our ability to speak and have these difficult conversations. I don't know about you guys, but it's sometimes it's a little disheartening for me when I hear about all that. And
what is the saying? What conflict avoided is conflict extended. Really, and it's like, and it's like, if we just simply act like some of these things didn't happen or whatever, it's like, that's not right either. We can't do that. No. So yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. So, and I love the way you were talking about there, Fred, about, putting things in context as far as events that are happening today. Like, for instance, and again, I don't want to get real political here or anything like that, but of course, we just recently had the whole Speaker of the House thing going on, where they were trying to elect a new speaker, and it took several votes to do it. Well, of course, I was able to talk about that in class and kind of say, really the last time this happened was right before the Civil War happened. I mean, it was right there as the 1860 election took place, where they were trying to elect a new Speaker of the House. That was the last time this happened. And so, students, we kind of talked about a little bit like, well, what was the nation going through back then? What is it going through now? And are we getting to that point where we can't see eye to eye on issues? And we were kind of able to talk about it a little bit by kind of looking and seeing what was happening back then and in relation to what's happening now. And again, by no means am I suggesting we're going to be taking the extremes that happened in 1861 or anything like that. But but again, it's just kind of interesting to look at and see what have been other times in history when these same things have happened. So
yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It's crazy. And I was just going to add in there, I didn't mean to jump in, Aaron, but that, like, and once again, some people look at history as a boring topic. I love it. I was always a history minor, so it was like I kind of found all kinds of interesting things about it. But yeah, there's something to take away. So yeah, you don't want to repeat the Civil War, because if you read the accounts and stories from mothers and brothers and sisters torn apart, I mean, it should be enough to say, hold on, folks, let's talk, because it was bad, but it's a boring subject. Civil War, boring. People dress
since
funny,
we're kind of talking in that time frame, Jared, when you and I were talking about having you come on and talk with us, I said, how about January? And I was like, what happened in history in January? So we were like, Emancipation Proclamation. So what are some things that we should be doing or just kind of reviewing now to remember what the Emancipation Proclamation was?
Well, when you brought this up, honestly, I'm probably going to get nerdy on you. I'm going to get like the history boring. Well, honestly, and Fred, what you were saying there about, people learning history made me think of every time I tell somebody that I'm a history teacher, like anytime I talk to an adult who's a history teacher, the very first thing they say to me, I bet 90% of the time, the first thing they say to me is, I wish I would have paid more attention in history class when I was in junior high and high school. That everybody, once they get to be a little bit older, they begin to recognize, oh yeah, history actually is really important and actually really interesting. And so again, that's why we have networks like History Channel and things like that, I suppose, because people do find that to be interesting. Well, anyway, with the Emancipation Proclamation, Proclamation. You know what? I should have grabbed, I got like this cool copy of the Emancipation Proclamation. Actually looks like Abraham Lincoln's face. I should have brought that down here with me, but I forgot to grab it. You can see I got all my Lincoln stuff behind me here. But the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, what's really fascinating about the Emancipation Proclamation when you think about it is that Lincoln did it as a political and military strategy. It was not necessarily out of yes, he wanted to see enslaved people freed, but when he did it, it was more out of, he wanted to take the wind out of the sails of the Confederacy, and he wanted to ensure that foreign powers, such as European powers, wouldn't come in and join the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy, since most European nations, or basically all European nations, had done away with slavery years before. And so it was really a thing. It was a political move, really, is what it was, because, you know, and you may have heard this before, I'm not sure, but, you know, when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he freed absolutely no one, because it was only applying to the southern states. And in the proclamation, he explicitly said the border states like Missouri, Kentucky, which were slave states, it didn't free any enslaved people there. And so he didn't want to lose those states in the war. And so he wasn't going to do it then in those states. And so he just simply did it really as a political move. And so, you know, he faced a lot of criticism because, you know, some people were like, the abolitionists at the time were like, this is not going far enough. You need to absolutely, once and for all, say that slavery is done for, which would be the right thing to do. But Lincoln, in the midst of a war, he couldn't, and it's unfortunate to recognize this reality. Most of the people fighting in the war for the Union were not fighting to free enslaved people. They were fighting to maintain the Union, and he couldn't risk losing those soldiers' support. And so the best way he could think to do it was by just simply not applying it to border states and only doing it in the South. So again, in the South, they didn't acknowledge orders from the president. And so it didn't technically free anybody. But at the same time, though, you have to look at the Emancipation Proclamation and recognize, you know, think about all the years before this, how the federal government had been supporting slavery. And again, that's kind of an uncomfortable truth about our history, is that our federal government on every turn during the early half of the 1800s supported slavery whenever it was challenged, which again is sad to see, but again is a truth. But finally, Lincoln comes in and says, no, we're done doing that. This war is now going to be about keeping the Union together, but it's also going to be about emancipation for enslaved people. And so, I mean, that's a big moment when he finally does put his foot down, even though he didn't necessarily free anybody at that moment. He knew that it was going to set the precedent that this was going to be moving forward. We were going to get this done. And so, of course, you guys may know the story that, you know, Lincoln now, when the war is coming to an end, he realizes the Supreme Court could strike down his presidential order of the Emancipation Proclamation. So he knows he has to get an amendment to the Constitution. And of course, that's when he gets the 13th Amendment pushed through, you know, shortly before his assassination. He's able to get that pushed through Congress and everything, and eventually gets approved by the states and everything. So again, he eventually gets that 13th Amendment that is going to concrete say that slavery is no longer allowed in America. So again, it is an important moment to recognize, and I apologize, I'm getting nerdy there, but again, I love American history and talking about that stuff. And so again, another reason why, and I'm sure if you look behind me, you see all my pictures of Lincoln. Even though Lincoln had his faults, and there were, you know, he wasn't perfect, just like none of us are. Right. He still is what I consider to be our greatest president, because he was one that finally said, yes, I'm going to put my foot down and say, this is it. This is where we're going to end it. And so yeah. So anyway, I know I gave you the long answer there.
No, that was great, because I don't think a lot of people realize a lot of that. So even though it was a political agenda, for me, it's always fascinating that we now well into the future can look back and be like, he probably didn't even know that this was really going to be it, but he put a little crack in the doorway to allow that to start go to the next step,
to do the right thing. He finally opened the door for the right thing to happen, you know? So So again, I have a video all about the Emancipation Proclamation where I give that
and
whole
I've watched
thing.
a lot of your videos, because you do, I feel like you do try to include in your videos things about a variety of different people, and I appreciate that. And so I'm sitting here thinking about you know, what are other resources, books, movies, things that we as educators or parents can use to try to make sure that others' stories are being shared in our history?
Well, actually, I apologize if I'm going to point to it because I wanted to highlight a few things that I've got for my resources.
That's okay.
That I feel like I hope every teacher at some point shows some of these to their students. Of course, we have February coming up next month. It's going to be Black History Month, and I have several videos focusing on great African Americans in our history. I'm curious, have any of you guys ever heard of Eugene Bullard before? Anyone here ever heard of Eugene Bullard? No? Okay,
No.
well, you have to go and watch my video because Eugene Bullard is hands. I sometimes I say to my students, if I was to make a website called, and I shouldn't curse on here, but Bad of History, the Eugene Bullard would be on one of the first pages of my website as being one of the great, tough guys in American history. Eugene Bullard was the first African-American fighter pilot in history he flew for the French during World War I. And it is amazing the stuff that he does. I mean, he fights in World War I, then he's a spy during World War II, spying on the Germans, and he comes back to America and basically goes into obscurity, which again, he comes back to America and faces racism and discrimination here in America and goes into obscurity, but he's considered to be one of the greatest war heroes of all time in France during World War I. And so he's a really fascinating story. So again, if you get the chance, look up Eugene Bullard. The other one I wanted to bring up here real quickly. Have you guys heard of Robert Smalls?
Yeah.
No one's heard? You heard of Robert Smalls? You know what he
That's
did?
a name. That's a familiar name though, but there's a lot of Smalls.
Not you're killing me, Smalls. Not
You're killing me, Smalls.
No,
He's
it's
small.
not that Smalls. Robert Smalls was an enslaved person in South Carolina during the Civil War. He actually steals a Confederate naval ship and rescues about 13 other enslaved people and actually brings the ship to the Union Army and then begins to captain the ship himself for the Union Army towards the end of the war and actually supports Sherman's march to the sea and everything. And so, and then actually later on, he becomes a congressman. So he is an absolutely amazing story as well. So if you're looking for some Black history and some people that maybe you haven't heard of before, check those two guys out because they're amazing stories. But I have several other videos devoted to a lot of other famous African Americans in history. But then I'm skipping ahead. March, we have Women's History Month coming up in March,
hey,
and so yeah, I've got a whole list of videos focused on women in American history. If you ever heard of Sarah Josepha Hale, she's the mother of Thanksgiving. She's an amazing story. Also, okay, I'm going to throw another name out here. See if you guys ever heard of her. Biddy Mason. Have you ever heard of Biddy Mason?
No, but that's a name.
Look up Biddy Mason. She was an enslaved person who ended up being taken to California, and she gets her freedom in California and really becomes the first real estate mogul in California in the late 1800s. And so she's a really amazing story as well.
That's
to hear her
cool.
story. So check out Biddy Mason. She's another one of my favorite ones that I always bring up when I do like Women's History Month. And so like during Women's History Month in my classroom, usually every day a bell ringer will be about a woman in American history, or during Black History Month, every bell ringer each day in my classroom will be something focusing on Black history. So again, I just threw those resources out there. I'm sorry. I know I'm kind of plugging my own resources.
That's great. And as you're saying this, even the Women's Month, I didn't really realize as a kid in my social studies classroom, the posters are all hanging up were all men, all white men, all men. And it didn't dawn on me because you don't know what you don't know, right? As you're a kid, what's different, what you maybe should be exposed to. And it wasn't until I became a teacher and was studying to become a teacher that I realized, and we were having these conversations about what's in your room. Do you have things in there that reflect your community? Can a kid see themselves in what you have in your room and in your resources? And it didn't dawn on me that, as a kid, I wasn't seeing things that showed me, hey, Aaron, you could be a leader, you could be someone in history, you could, you know what I mean? So we're hopefully well beyond that. And so I appreciate that you're highlighting these.
So that's kind of another uncomfortable fact about history is that unfortunately there's sexism that, throughout most of history it has occurred. But I was going to point out a couple other resources. I think I mentioned this earlier. Battlefield Trust. If you're looking for some really good resources, Battlefield Trust is a great site. They actually started out, they were a website that was focused on saving Civil War battlefields that basically they, if you know right now, urban sprawl is basically taking over all these battlefields.
Mhm.
And so they're an organization that goes in and tries to buy up property to protect it from urban sprawl. But they've kind of, their resources kind of evolved because it's turned into less about Civil War history and now really all of American history. And so that's a really great site to check out, is a site called Battlefield Trust. Again, me being a YouTuber, I'll kind of point out probably my favorite other history YouTube channel. There's a guy that has a channel called History Underground. It's hosted by, actually, he's a teacher as well. His name's JD Hewitt. And he does some great videos, especially if you're looking for like World War II history, anything like that. He does some really amazing, great cinematography and everything. His videos are a little bit longer, but he's got some really great stuff if you want to check that out. But then too, I wanted to point out, again, I guess you were asking for films that, parents or teachers might be looking for. I realize this one is a rated R film, but I show it to my students because I send home a permission slip. But the movie Glory, hopefully you guys have seen the movie Glory.
The soundtrack alone, Jared,
yes,
is just
exactly. But all about the 54th Massachusetts. And actually, one reason I'm really into the movie Glory is the town where I live in Western Illinois. There are actually 12 guys from my town who went and volunteered for the 54th Massachusetts. And actually 3 of them are buried here in Galesburg, my town where I live. And so yeah, I've taken my kids out to see their tombstones and everything and talk to them about the 54th. And so I love talking about the 54th because they're a fascinating story as well.
Oh yeah.
And everything. So again, if you're looking for something like, especially here as we get into Black History Month, if you're looking for a resource, yes, it's rated R, but it's a movie well worth watching. So yeah. Those are some of my favorite resources that I really love.
That's a
good ones. And you remind me, I need to watch Glory again. The sound, the soundtrack, anyone, if you've not listened to that soundtrack, it is
yeah,
so good.
It's inspiring to listen to.
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like I'm learning so much. I wish that we could continue to have these history lessons, but I'm wondering if there are any teachers, mentors, anyone growing up that, you kind of mentioned your dad probably maybe not knowing inspired you, your older brother in history, but is there anyone else? We like to kind of hear the stories and tell stories about educators in our lives.
Well, again, I have to give a shout out to my brother because he is just, again, my ultimate hero, I suppose. He's the one that really got me into history, got me into like video editing and kind of put all that together for me. Eventually I put it together, but again, he kind of got me into that. So I have to acknowledge my brother as being one of my biggest
Jason,
heroes.
Right, Jared?
Yeah, my brother Jason. Yeah, he's a wonderful person. But I was going to say some of my people that I really looked up to, or I've looked up to when I graduated from Illinois State, and I took a social studies seminar, and I love this professor so much. His name was Fred Walk, and
great name.
He was, yeah, and he was Fred Walk was he was a teacher there in Bloomington Normal, Illinois for like 30 years, teaching in the high school there. And you talk about a guy that was just a wealth of knowledge. Going to his class was not just your flat listening about history. He gave you the ways to teach and gave you ideas. And again, he was just one of my all-time favorite teachers. Whenever I think about my education, he's one that I was really inspired by. And then too, I teach in a smaller junior high now, but for several years I taught in another larger junior high, and I taught with a great teacher named Don Malcolm, who, and again, maybe you've had some episodes where you talked about classroom discipline and how to maintain that, which is really tough. She is one of those teachers I really look up to because she's one that can be really hard-nosed with the kids, but yet at the same time maintain a great relationship, because that's really a tough balance to do, is, keeping, really being on top of the kids about stuff, but then also being really their friend as well. And that's really tough to do. And she does a really great job of it. So she's one that I really look up to. Another great teacher I worked with, this guy named Stu Skosma. I actually worked with him as an instructional coach. I was an instructional coach for a couple of years as well in my district. And he was one of my fellow instructional coaches. And I just really admired him because he could look at problems in the classroom and kind of get different perspectives that I wasn't able to get. And he kind of made me think a little bit about what was going on in the classroom and how to address problems in the classroom. So yeah, there's been some great, people I've worked with, mentors,
Wow.
teachers I've had in the past. I suppose the last one I'll mention here real quickly, and you may be surprised to hear this. I had a teacher in high school my junior year named Dave Moore, who was the history teacher, and he just passed away probably about a year ago. And it actually was interesting. I used to run into him now and then when we'd go out to eat here in town, and we'd sit and talk about history and everything. But you'd be surprised to find out I got a C in his class when I was in junior high. That's how tough a teacher he was. He was one that, I mean, you better know your stuff. And I suppose when I was a junior in high school, I wasn't on top of it as I thought I was, and I got a C in his class. But now looking back, I'm like, man, I learned a lot from that guy, and again, he was just a great teacher. So yeah, those are a few people that I would say are some of my, mentors and heroes.
I love the rolling credits. That's awesome to hear that you have so many people that have been a part of it. That's the way it should be. All right. So normally we do takeaways, but I think we're going to do something a little bit different on TPR. I would love for us each just to show our love for history and the importance of it and how we all find some kind of passion or connection as well. Like Jared, I would love for each of us to share some time in history, a person, an event, something that you tend to be kind of drawn to for whatever reason. Does that sound like a good idea? And then Jared, if you have like a tidbit or something, or like a, hey, you should check out this. If not, no worries, no pressure. But
okay.
I thought that might be kind of fun to hear what each of us are kind of interested in. So Fred, I'll let you go first, although I feel like he's given you so many resources tonight. Spoiler alert.
So you just want me to say what I'm drawn to as far as that section?
Yeah, when it comes to American history.
Yeah, I've always loved history, but I think where I'm drawn most recently is back into World War II history. And many of you may have heard or have even watched the Band of Brothers. In particular, one of the lead characters is Major Dick Winters. Major Dick Winters is from Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours south of me. And I was drawn to his character when I first saw the series, and then I had to go and find when I saw him portrayed in that way, I had to go and know more. I just wanted to absorb more about this fellow because he presented a character that was so different than so many others. He was a solid, good person, but he was also tactical and very proficient. Like he knew he had to learn his trade as an officer because he had lives in his hands. And he took it very seriously. And I loved that character. I'd always wanted to drive down and see him. Unfortunately, he passed. When I was getting ready to go do it, there was a kind note from his wife saying he's no longer taking any visitors. And I just loved to see those kind of stalwart characters. And as you do start to peel back, I wasn't finding those flaws. I was finding that he was getting stronger and stronger and stronger in these writings and the biographies and so on. He was somebody that, in my opinion, kind of really did stand up straight. And it was just really cool to see that.
That's cool. Whenever that comes on, Fred, I have to stop everything and watch it.
It's a great telling.
Yeah. How about you, Pete?
So tonight brought back memories I haven't thought of in so long. I'll share very quick. My grandfather was in a Civil War reenactment band. And he got all my friends in high school involved. I was their singer when they needed one. If not, I played the drums, but we would go to reenactments and marching parades. And his troop, his infantry, they were stand-ins on Glory years and years and years ago. So that I haven't thought about that in so long. I have a plaque right back there of our Civil War band with my grandfather and all. So thank you so much for bringing that back tonight. The stuff that I enjoy stumbling across is the history that it's like some of the people that Jared shared tonight. It's the people whose stories haven't been told yet. That would be such a remarkable movie. It's like, they're making all this crap. Yeah. Why haven't they done a movie about Biddy Mason yet? And, and all, and
exactly. We got Fast and Furious 12, but we don't have a movie about Robert Smalls,
right.
They're remarkable stories, and we can learn so much, and it can inspire people. So I love those. I also love I'm not, same thing with my music. I'm not stuck to just one genre or one time period. I'm all over the place. But I do like the books that say, the titles like Things That You Were Taught Wrong, or the fallacies that your teachers got wrong growing up, or, common misconceptions and things. I love those type of mysteries and things that you stumble across and say, huh, oh, that's why. Okay. So that's what really gets me going. The mysteries and the little known historical facts. That's what charges me up.
I like it. Nice. Yeah. How about you, Letitia?
I'm still stuck on Biddy, the Biddy movie. We need a Biddy movie.
Oh my God.
Well, before I share my kind of historical time period that I like, first, Jared, thank you for inspiring me. And to Pete's point, we need to be exposed to more than just, for example, Harriet Tubman. Not at all minimizing her historical significance, but you've inspired me, sir. And so I will be purchasing All Blood Runs Red about Eugene, and I'll be reading that during Black History Month. So thank you, sir, for inspiring me to do that. For me, guys, it's the women's suffrage time period. And I kind of got a little emotional just a minute ago, just thinking about sharing this because, history is very important for so many reasons. But as a woman of color who exercises her right to vote, I will admit the last few elections, I've been very passionate with my own adult children about understanding that people paid a huge price for us to vote. And so, during the long lines, and do I vote in person or not, mail it in or go, irregardless of all of that, it just kind of connected me to the giants like Susan B. Anthony, right? And all the women that fought for me to vote. And it puts it in perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why is mail-in a problem when women were pounding the pavements, giving their lives, standing in line several hours means nothing. And so that period is just important to me. And I will say this, that I probably pestered, particularly my daughter, to vote. And when I saw the, I use the word sacrifices lightly, but to see a 30-year-old like drive miles after work and this and that to cast her vote was kind of our way of paying homage to all those women that fought for us. So that's my favorite, one of my favorites.
Interesting. I like it. Okay. That's good. Very inspiring, Letitia. Mine, I am a big history nerd, so I actually had a hard time narrowing them down because I will read pretty much anything about history, or if I see a docuseries or documentary, I stop everything to watch it. There's two. One, anytime, and this is my fascination, I'll put Walt Disney in there as part of American history. I'm fascinated with people in our country that took risks, varying degrees, to make a difference or to make something that we even still today benefit from. I'm just fascinated by that. When they put everything on the line, when the odds were totally against them, right? And they did something and we still use it today or benefited from it today, or even we learned from it, like it ended up being a mistake, but now we know, things better now because of it. And the other one I thought of is I've always been fascinated with the assassination of JFK. I don't know why, other than maybe his assassination's around my birthday. And so every time my birthday comes up, there's always like these huge documentaries and things all over the news about it. So it might just be that I've always had that kind of in front of me as I get close to my birthday and Thanksgiving. But those are mine. Jared, I'm wondering, does anyone ask you, do you have something in particular you tend to be really drawn to?
Well, I think I probably made it obvious throughout what I was talking about. again, I told you before, I got inspired to be a teacher from visiting a lot of Civil War historic sites. So that's really my main thing. I think Civil War history is just absolutely fascinating. It's a huge turning point in our history, and just amazing to see how much changed in that 4 years of the Civil War. So that's probably, that's my big, I know it's very generic to say that, but
we live in Atlanta. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you had so much stuff in Atlanta. You have so much stuff in Atlanta to go see and everything related to that. I just wanted to kind of tag on a little bit here. Fred brought up Dick Winters. I was going to say, that guy, you talk about somebody who is the picture of leadership. That guy knew how to lead, and he led by example. And I feel like that's what we as teachers need to do. We need to lead by example, and, let kids see our attitude in the classroom, and see that, we're happy to be there, and we're excited to learn and everything.
Yes.
So again, he was one of those people, like studying Dick Winters. Yeah, you can learn a lot about leadership and everything. One thing that Pete brought up that I thought was kind of interesting was talking about things my teacher didn't tell me in school, because so many times I feel like we get stuck in the mold of we have these heroes in history that we can't dare question them. All right. Even Abraham Lincoln, I think he was a great president, but as I've learned more about him, I realized, he was a human being. He was flawed. There were things not about him that weren't great. And, we have these people in history that for some reason we want to just simply say, well, this person's a hero. And, and I still think we should focus on those great things that they did. But also, we kind of need to recognize too, they made mistakes. They had some ideas that weren't necessarily the best, but, they still got through that to do the right thing, in the end. And then Letitia, you were talking about suffrage. I wanted to ask you real quickly, have you ever heard about how the amendment actually got passed? How it actually got voted? Because again, it gets approved by 2/3 of Congress, but then 3/4 of the states have to approve an amendment. Well, unfortunately, you would think women's suffrage today, you'd be like, well, yeah, every state should be approving that. Why would we not be approving that? It came down to one final state. It got so close that Tennessee became the last state to approve women's suffrage, and it came down to one single congressman. It was a guy named Harry Byrne. He was only 25 years old, had just gotten voted into the Tennessee State House, and he was on the fence. He was like, I don't know if I'm going to vote for this or not. His mom writes him this letter and basically says, if you don't vote for this, you might as well, not come home for Thanksgiving, and everything. So she writes him this letter, and he's like, well, yeah, she's right. I should vote for it. And so he voted for it. And that's how women's suffrage got passed. I actually have an episode of the Daily Bellringer about women's suffrage. And I talk about
it. I love that.
Mom power.
But again, it's one of those things. It's you look at it and you're like, how in the world did this not pass by a landslide? Right. But again, it was 1920. People's ideas were a lot different back then. Absolutely. And it's I'm glad to see that we've moved on from that and moved forward from that. So yeah, I just like a lot of you guys had some great topics there. And I love too what you were saying about Disney and just risk taking. It's just neat to see people in the past that, Disney went to California with $20 in his pocket or something like that.
Yeah. And how many times did he put the mortgage of his home up? And if he made a wrong move, the house was gone.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So it's amazing to kind of look and see people taking risk, and that's inspiring to see. People went out and took risk and did that. I know I'm not trying to compare myself to Disney. Please don't think that. But my videos here, a lot of teachers contact me or say to me well, how can you put yourself on video all the time and be putting that out for all these people to see? And it's honestly, at some point you just kind of have to get over yourself. That's right. And you just have to realize, what? Yes. Again, there's a lot of studies that show that if you have a human face in front of you, that actually retains keeps your attention. And so that's one big reason why a lot of my videos, I switch between pictures and myself, because I try to maintain
it feels like we're in the classroom with you. So Jared, if listeners want to try to find you, where can they connect?
Well, of course, you can always go to YouTube and just search the Daily Bellringer, and my channel will come up there as the top channel on the Daily Bellringer. But then too, I do have a website, www.dailybellringer.com, and that's where I have a lot of my resources there. Again, most of my resources focus on American history, but I'm gradually, because I've had so many teachers contact me asking, will you please start putting together world history stuff? And so I'm gradually starting to build in a world history library, which is a whole lot tougher to do because there's so much. It's like American history. It's like, yeah, I've only got maybe 200 pages in the book I need to cover. World history, it's like, oh my goodness,
we'll have to talk, because I taught world literature for years and would always cross collaborate with the world history teacher. So if you want some literature books or poetry or plays that could tie into your history, what was written during those time period, let's talk, because I will definitely nerd out with you on that big time.
Okay, well, I have to tell you, I'm not as well versed in world history. I've only taught that maybe 2 or 3 times, and so I'm still trying to. This year, I'm actually getting back into teaching that again, and I'm just like, man, I'm trying to remember what did I talk about last time I did this a decade ago.
It'll come back. It'll come back.
Yeah.
Pete, where can our group find us?
Okay, friends. So Instagram, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us, YouTube, join our Facebook group. Our website is teacherpeprally.com. Wherever you're listening to us, leave us a review, subscribe, share. Let's keep the conversation going. And that's another great episode.
Yeah. And hop on to Facebook and let us know what you're obsessed with in history. We'd love to learn that. Well, Jared, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. If you're ever I know Atlanta, let us know, and us in Georgia would love to show you around some of the Civil War and other museums that we have here.
Well,
same this way.
I'm probably going to head towards Fred because I really want to go to Gettysburg again. So I might be heading his direction.
You know what? You got me. Please do reach out to me or anytime you're in this area. Please do. I'd love to talk to you more. We could have lots of.
Bad thing is I have to talk my wife into going out there. That's the problem. So
I'll tell you, it's a great time. It's a great visit. It's just a great site.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's been years since I've been there, so I need to go back there again.
Well, come on. All right, Jared. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on here. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.